So, good day everyone. I'm Jennifer Trinidad from Group 7 and today we will be discussing the topics under project closure. First of all, let me introduce my group mates and their topic that they will be discussing. First, we have Xyrel Garido for project closeout reports and evaluate complete deliverable and success criteria. Then, Vina Leaño for gain formal acceptance and release project resources. Jennifer Trinidad for archive records. Jullienne D for closeout report template. Andrea Mae Dumalag for lesson learned. And Mae Ibita for looking at the full life cycle. And now let us start with the report of Xyrel Garido.
The objectives of the study is to define what is project closure and its importance, to know what is project closure report and how to write it, to evaluate complete deliverable and success criteria in a project, understand the benefits of identifying and documenting lessons learned, to understand the various sections of a closeout report template that summarize project results, and lastly, to understand the full life cycle of project management.
What is project closure? So project closure is the crucial final stage of the project management life cycle. This is where the team compares and evaluates the quality of the deliverables to the intended project outcome during project closure. And also, the client of the project then receives the deliverables. Why is project closure important? A team's and an organization culture can be better defined through effective project closure. Better work and satisfied clients are the results of approaching project completion with the mindset that is essential to achieving success. A key outcome of project completion is learning. The procedure sets the stage for future projects that are more satisfying and successful. So, you may still have deliverables that the clients can use if you don't properly close a project, but you won't be able to examine what worked and what didn't work during the project. Reviewing what you have done and learn is essential. Make sure you figured out how the team could benefit from this knowledge so that you don't hinder the growth of each team member or the organization as a whole. So project closure is important because the process allows you to tie up loose ends. So you've already delivered project outcomes to the client, but be sure to report all outcomes internally. Make sure all contracts are signed, paid, and finalized, and also clean up your files. Ensure you reviewed your progress and determine if you delivered the project on time and on budget. You'll also want to attend to logistic details as well as relinquish physical space, digital equipment, and resources to responsible departments. This technical aspect of project closure allow you to close the project cleanly and facilitate an easy transition from the project teamwork to be more typical rhythms of your organization's operation. So to create a project closure report, you need to label the document first, and this is where a typical project closure report begins. At the top with the project name, the name of the team or individual members, the name of the project manager, the names of the executive sponsors, and the current date. So senior management or stakeholders can use this information to better understand the project specifics and organize the report. Additionally, naming the responsible team or its members can make it simpler for management to get in touch with the team for clarification or additional questions. So the second one is to write an overview of the project. It is where it explains the project goal, the necessary procedures, and how those procedures work in practice. So a brief look at the problem or opportunity addressed, the project's goal, and success metrics are also included. The report's contents can also be summarized in a summary statement at the conclusion of your overview. For the third step is describe the project accomplishments, outcomes, and results in a section below the overview. You might want to think about putting the outcome targets in a table and describing the target, the expected and actual completion dates. So this section examines the project as a whole in light of the success metrics and describes the factors that contributed to each positive and negative outcome. So for the fourth step, describe the scope of the project. So a project scopes describe the specific objectives, deliverables, project or service features, tasks, and deadlines. Additionally, it provides a comprehensive account of the project completion. project completion process. So to discover variations in resources, costs, or deadlines, you can analyze and compare the scope to the actual timeline and the costs of the project. The details of the project described in the overview statement are discussed in greater depth in the section of the report. So the fifth step is to prep a project performance analysis. So the project performance analysis is one of the most important parts of the report because it provides information about the budget, schedule, goals, and success, as well as expanding on the scope. The principal three sections that could be included in this section of the report are as follows. First one is the objective performance and goals. So it explains the project initial objectives, how many of them you achieved, and which one you changed during the project. Second one is the success criteria performance. So it describes how, when, or whether the performance met its performance objectives. The third one is the schedule and budget performance. So in this section, you can talk about the project schedule, budget, and whether the team managed to stay within those parameters, and include the reasons why the team didn't adhere to those limits. For the sixth step is to highlight challenges and risks that develop. This section discusses the risks and challenges encountered throughout the project's timeline, including how they affected other project components like the budget and schedule. You can also list risks like tight budget or bad working conditions. This can be useful for future project planning as a reference. So for the seventh step is to write about lessons learned, suggestions for future projects, and project manager comments. So include comments from the project manager, suggestions for future projects, and lesson learned. A list of the obstacles that they overcame and the lessons learned can be useful for future reference. Teams working on subsequent projects can examine this data to avoid similar difficulties. Additionally, the team may have received advice from stakeholders or seniors management, and including this information can be beneficial to other teams. The eighth step is to create a financial summary. So the cost of each resource, ongoing cost, and projected budget, and the actual amount spent are all included in the financial summary of the project closure report. To make the section easier to read and effectively organize the project financial data, you can format it as two tables separated by the cost or resources and ongoing costs. If you need additional funds to finish the project, you can also include a notes section at the bottom of the table to explain any cost differences. So for the ninth step is to describe the transfer of operations by listing ongoing tasks and explaining how they are transferred to operations, including the identification of operational rules, include brief information about each task, the operation rule, the person in that role's name, and the date of the transition. Documentation for official records is provided in the section. So for the 10th step is to request project closure approval. So this is the final step in creating a project closure report. And in here, the senior management and stakeholders can consent to the official termination of a project. And this section can also be formatted as a table with sections such as spaces for signatures, labels for each role, and the current date. This section is also significant because it indicates that all relevant parties approve of the final product and that all project management processes have been completed. How to define project management success. So success in project management is measured by how well a project manager achieves the project's goal and objectives. Getting a project done on time, within budget, and with limited resources are all part of it. Project managers, on the other hand, must also work to build positive relationships with all stakeholders. So what are project success criteria? The criteria for project success are the following. So there are two types of success criteria for project management. The first kind is inextricably linked to project management. The alignment of organizational project objectives and project management is crucial. This can be accomplished in a number of ways, including conducting project audits, holding regular meetings, adhering to the schedule and deadlines, and achieving the desired level of product or service quality. The project deliverable, or what the project set out to accomplish in the first place, is the second criterion for project success. The accomplishment of the primary objectives outlined is the project's strategic plan, such as providing users with the service or product and making sure they are satisfied.
So when done well, project closure signals to each team member that the project was meaningful and simply the job is complete. Project closure provides a technical stoppage to any loose ends and enables you to inventory the lessons learned. These steps also provide an emotional closure for each team members, including the project manager. Archive the projects, learning for the benefit of the team and organization. So the final step in project closure is to finalize the project closure report and archive it so that it's accessible to all relevant parties. It's important to notify team members on where to find the report for formal presentation to upper management. If you're lucky, you'll be able to come back as a team in the future. If that's the case, your effective project closure helps set the stage for team success the next time you assemble.
So why is it important to define and measure project success? When working toward these goals and delivering the project's outcome, teams can benefit from knowing the benchmark of success. So the last question is, what are the 3 success criteria for projects? So there are 3 constraints in success factors for the project, and those are the time, scope, and cost. Even though the particulars may differ depending on the project's industry, employer, or objective, success is dependent on these 3 aspects.
Gain formal acceptance. Formal acceptance of the project and project deliverables are taken from the customer. Usually, the customer presents a written document. It can be an email or a sign-off document which states that the project has been completed and they accept the outputs of the project. Formal sign-off and acceptance are acquired. The most important step of the project closing phase is getting formal sign-off and acceptance of the customer, because projects are initiated based on a business need and customer requests. Therefore, if the customer does not accept the final outputs and product, a project cannot be closed. The project is closed after getting final sign-off and administrative work is completed. After getting final sign-off of the customer, there will be procedures and paperwork within the organization for the official project closure.
So here I am again. I will now be discussing the topic about archive records or archiving historical information. First, what is an archive? An archive is a place where public records or historical data are being preserved and stored. Archive data can include manuscripts, letters, photographs, moving image and sound materials, artwork, book, diaries, artifacts, and also the digital equivalents of these things. It is being used by the students, researchers, novelists, artists, filmmakers, journalists, architects, and many more. In addition, there are various institutions that manages the archive depending on their familiarity or specific fields. The following are the types of archives depending on the field of institutions. We have college and university archives, corporate archives, government or national archives, historical societies, museum archives, religious archives, and special collections. So in this lesson, we will be able to know about the information to store about projects, ways to build a project archive, and the Microsoft project management software. Information to store about projects. There are times that project managers are having a hard time on planning a project, that they would only have a limited time to study the project after it is finished. Fortunately, there is the project notebook. Project notebook contains all the historical information that a project manager will be needing. It is a comprehensive collection of project plans and actual performance. The following are the list of information that is typically included in a project notebook that can be stored in the project archive when the project is already closed. We have the project contact list, project overview, original project plan including the project schedule, as delivered plan, requirements, detailed design specifications, change request log and documents, risk management plan and documents, issues log, deliverable acceptance log and forms, training, testing, correspondence, meeting minutes, status reports, project performance and variance reports, project closeout reports, and lessons learned. After compiling all the needed documents in the project notebook, the project is now ready to be archived along with the other completed projects. Take note that the information gathered and stored in the project notebook depends on the project type, size of the project, and the maturity of the project management process. Now, the question is, how can we store completed projects in the archive where we can easily identify each project without checking the contents one by one? In the next slide, we will discover ways to build a project archive. Ways to build a project archive. Groups of people like customers, managers, team members, and project managers require different types of project information. Through organizing the documentation of projects and storing it in an accessible area would make it easier to access whenever they need to look for an information. In making a project archive, there are considerations that we need to check. First, check if there is an existing procedure to submit completed projects in the archive at your company or organization. If there is an existing way of archiving completed projects, you just need to follow the existing one. However, if there is none and you wanted to build a project archive, you should start by small step. You can look for an existing management tools to determine what you need to store. Then, as the requirement of the organization grows, you'll have the chance to propose a tool like the Microsoft Project Server, which will be discussed later on. Remember that the best solution for archiving projects is considering the size, quantity of the projects you handle, and also the budgetary requirement the organization can shoulder along with the capability of the IT staff. There are few options in storing project information, whether you are a president, primary project manager, bookkeeper, and system administrator. For the options in storing project information, first we have the shared folders. This is an example of project information in a simple way. Storing the information in the shared network drive can make it easily accessible for all members. You create a folder structure for the projects in the drive that everyone can have an access. The team members connect to the drive and check the works they need. However, this method is difficult to control, specifically if the organization doesn't have an IT staff to manage the drive. An example of this is Google Drive. The second one is shared workspace. In this method, the organization cannot just store information in the cloud, but they can also have a chance to communicate with other team members who have access in the workspace. It is a website that can be used as a repository for documents and a place to communicate with the team members. When a project is complete, you can store it in the website and make it as an archive. All members need to do is open the website in the browser with permissions to access the contents. For example, Microsoft SharePoint. In the next slide, we will discuss the Microsoft Enterprise Project Management Software. Microsoft Enterprise Project Management Software. The Microsoft Project Management Software is a solution that serves as an option for the organization to manage their projects and wanted to have a tool in managing their portfolios, whether it is for the past or for the present times. The software uses a project database to hold information about project schedules and resources. It also employs the SharePoint to provide a shared workspace for document libraries, risk tracking, and managing issues. Why do we need to archive historical information? As the definition states, archive is a place where we can store historical information for us to be able in using it in the future. Looking back where we came from is a key to have a successful future. The past taught us lessons to make use of it in the future. So archiving historical information in an organization is helpful in making projects since it contains all the important data that can be used as reference in the future. Previous projects made by an organization have process to take, and every record of it counts. Complete projects in a company can be a basis for implementing a new one. Old projects can be revised and be modified by the new generations. Every data in the project book or notebook is important for a company to check their progress. The historical records will show how much improvement does the company or organization made for the past years.
Release project resources. Formally, release resources from the project including suppliers, contractors, team members, and any other partners. Notify them at the end of the project, confirm any final payments or obligations, and finally release them so they are free to work on other projects. Why is it important to release project resources? Releasing project resources when a project is finished allows them to be moved on to other projects, and the resources in question could be extra office space that was leased for the project, outside contractors who were brought in, and staff seconded from inside the business to work on the project. Persons who are required to take action after finishing a project is the project manager, who will take care of all the action from the business side, the resource owner such as the supplier or the line manager of a seconded team member, the person who has been working on the project and will be released back to their team, and lastly, the HR department who may need to plan training or catch up for the returning staff. The process for releasing resources when closing a project will ensure that your project manager catch all the loose ends and maintain relationships with workers and suppliers. And this will mark the end of the work of nearly everyone on the project, with maybe a project manager and 1 or 2 support staff in place to finish up paperwork and close processes.
Good morning. I'm Jullienne D, and I will discuss the closeout report template. This project closeout template is appropriate for project managers working in a variety of fields. It enables you to compare project baselines such as scope, schedule, budget, and deliverables, which actual results include analysis of communications management, team performance, and learning outcomes. Project closeout templates save project managers time by providing organized checklists for completion planning, post-mortem agendas for project review, and formal closeout reports for approval sign-off from clients and internal stakeholders. By offering all of these capabilities, closure templates enable you to do exactly what this final phase of the project lifecycle requires. The first section of a closeout report template provides general information. Provide basic information about the project including project title, the proper name used to identify this project, project working title, the working name or acronym that will be used for the project, proponent secretary, the secretary to whom the proponent agency is assigned or the secretary that is sponsoring an enterprise project, proponent agency, the agency that will be responsible for the management of the project, prepared by the persons preparing this document, date or control number, the date the report is finalized, and the change or configuration item control number assigned. Project deliverables. List all project deliverables and the date each was accepted by the user. Identify any contingencies or conditions related to the acceptance. Closing out your project is to finalize and transfer the project deliverables to the client. Go through your project plan to identify all deliverables and make sure they have been fully complete and handed off. Performance baseline. Document how the project performed against each performance goal established in the project performance plan. Establishing a baseline allows you to assess performance throughout the duration of the project. If a project is performing behind time schedule or above budget, it is time to either make changes to the baseline or add more resources by increasing time or cost. Cost budget baseline. State the planned cost and funding for the project. As approved in the initial cost baseline and the project charter, state the actual cost and funding at completion. Document and explain all cost and funding variances, including approved changes to the cost baseline. The cost baseline is a bottom line issue, but it's also a way to assess cost variance, cost performance, and planned effort versus actual effort. Without a baseline, you have nothing to measure your spending against and control cost. A cost baseline helps stakeholders keep a balance between their expectations for the end product and the finances they realistically need in order to complete the project satisfactorily. Even if you create the best possible plan for your project, the project may still fall short. Schedule baseline. Compare the initial approved schedule baseline against the actual completion dates. Enter the planned start and finish dates from the initial schedule baseline. Document all the actual start, finish dates, and explain any schedule variances, including approved changes to the schedule baseline. Schedule baseline utilized for tracking progress on a project, including the accomplishment of contract milestone and budgetary compliance. A baseline schedule advises all stakeholders of the time frame of the project. Because it is a frozen schedule, it is compared with actual project progress. Scope. Document any changes to the project scope and their impact on performance, cost, or schedule baselines. A project scope explains the specific goals, deliverables, features of the product or service, tasks, and deadlines. It also describes everything that went into completing the project from beginning to end. Operations and maintenance. Describe the plan for operation and maintenance of the product, good, or service delivered by the project. State that projected annual cost to operate and maintain the product, good, or service. Identify where and why this projection of cost differs, if it differs from the project proposal. If the operation and maintenance plan is not in place, what is the target date for the plan and what is the impact of not having operations and maintenance for the product, good, or services in place? Project resources. List the resources specified in the resource plan and used by the project. Identify to whom each resource was transferred and when it was transferred. Account for all project resources utilized by the project. Project documentation. Identify all project documentation materials stored in the project library or the other repository. Identify the type of media used and the disposition of the project documentation. C. Communications plan. Effectively documenting project phases can help project managers and stakeholders review important project aspects, evaluate a project's performance, and reference key information quickly. Lessons learned. Identify lessons learned for the feedback to the Commonwealth project management process. Lessons learned should be stated in terms of problems or issues and corrective actions taken. Provide a brief discussion of the problem that identifies its nature, source, and impact. Cite any references that provide additional detail. References may include project reports, plans, issue logs, change management documents, and general literature or guidance used that comes from another source. A lessons learned report aims to help project managers and their teams identify the root causes of problems or wins of their past projects. These reports serve as a historical document as well to learn how to avoid these problems or set themselves up for the success again on future projects. Dates for post-implementation review and report. Identify the date for completing the post-implementation report and the person responsible for this action. The post-implementation review evaluates whether the objectives were met, how effectively the project was run, lessons for the future, and actions required to maximize the benefits from the project outputs. Approvals. This is critical and important step. because it signifies the customer agrees that the scope of the project and its deliverables are complete and were delivered as agreed upon by all parties. Acceptance is based upon the success criteria defined in the initiating and planning phases of the project.
Good day everyone, my name is Andrea Mae Dumalag and I will be presenting the lesson learned. This chapter focuses on how you learn from past performance to improve future results, which covers more about psychology than it does project management. You will learn some techniques to draw out the successes that people have achieved, as well as effective yet gentle ways to identify the mistakes that you don't want to repeat. More importantly, you will learn how to take advantage of your lessons learned by documenting them and publicizing them so that everyone else in your organization can put them into practice. The importance of lessons learned. Documenting performance and other information about past projects and making a point of reviewing that information before beginning new project is the most effective way to improve project performance. Nothing is as disheartening as making the same mistakes you made once before. And why should anyone else have to suffer the frustration of repeating a mistake when you've already paid that price? So remembering and repeating a project's successes is just as important. Best practices are effective because they help people move forward instead of reinventing what someone else already discovered. Lessons learned can also demonstrate how project management helps improve performance or how the lack of project management hurts. Folks who are new to projects might not understand the value of project management practices. Learning from the past is the easiest way to improve performance in the future. Lessons learned provide real-life examples that can be persuasive. For instance, suppose you've had trouble with scope creep in the past. If documented lessons learned identify the lack of change management as the culprit, you will have an easier time convincing your executives to support a change management system. Knowing how much scope creep costs other projects or how much money a preliminary change management process has saved can be even more compelling to cost-conscious executives. Here are some of the ways that you can put lessons learned either positive or negative to use. Apply proven effective techniques. Eliminate the cost of past mistakes. Build better estimates. Educate project managers and team members. Apply proven effective technique. If you've used a document template to produce a document, you already know how reuse can speed up and increase the accuracy of your work. Proven practices, processes, and documents work the same for projects. Successful strategies, powerful approaches, time-saving techniques, shortcuts, checklists, and well-designed documents help future project teams start where past teams left off. For example, suppose you discover that the usually recalcitrant sales team calls you back when you leave messages that tell it which sales won't go through until it resolves an issue with you. By sharing this nugget with other team members and project managers, you can improve the performance of more projects than your own, increase the results of the entire organization, and spread joy to people around you. Although every project is unique, many projects share tasks, types of resources, typical costs, and potential risk. If a completed project is similar to the one you're managing, you can reuse that project's documents and templates to save time and increase accuracy. Eliminate the cost of past mistakes. Mistakes can be costly in so many ways. For example, overspent budgets, delays, missed deadlines, poor quality, reduced scope, unmet objectives, and damaged reputation. So your organization has paid for past mistakes. It will just as soon not to pay for them again. You can avoid a second round of tuition by reviewing the mistakes that others have made and taking steps to prevent them. Build better estimates. Every project struggles with unceasing optimism of the people who estimates project time, money, and other resource requirements. You can build more realistic estimates for your projects by evaluating actual values from completed projects. For example, if past projects underestimated the time and resources needed, you can increase your future estimates. If those projects run into problems, you can estimate shorter schedule and lower cost because you've learned how to prevent similar problems. Lastly, educate project managers and team members. Educating team members can make your job as project manager easier. Using lessons from past projects, you can show team members why you ask them to perform the task that you do. They will realize that you're trying to help rather than annoy. And they will work more autonomously so you have more time to keep projects on track. Past performance can help you convince others that your plans will work, whether you are trying to build a schedule that the team can meet or prove the benefits of project management to your company's executives. For example, if previous projects couldn't meet the deadlines and budget you're being asked to accept, you can push for more realistic numbers. Or you could show that the time spent on quality assurance and control actually saves money instead of costing extra. Collecting lessons learned. Status updates, code reviews, and other project meetings can be convenient opportunities for gathering suggestions for what to do and what not to do in the future. But scheduling meetings regularly and specifically for identifying lessons learned is a good idea. Extracting lessons learned from recent team members requires a delicate balance of honesty and tact. Getting the attendees into a productive mindset and laying out the ground rules for these meetings takes some extra care. For an effective project reviews and lesson learned meeting to happen, it needs a few participants to play as special roles, and the other attendees to interact on productive ways. Moreover, running meetings that emphasize improvement rather than blame is the best approach. The participants and their contributions to running a worthwhile lessons learned meeting is as follows. The first participant is the project manager. Project manager initiate lesson learned meetings, so most of the meeting preparation falls into their hand. The meeting responsibilities of a project manager are planning the agenda, estimating the length of the meeting, scheduling the meeting date, time, and location, and lastly, distributing the meeting materials. The second participant is the lessons learned facilitator. The facilitator assists the project manager by setting up the meeting or focuses strictly on ensuring a productive session. So the task of a facilitator is to describe the goals of the meeting, such as identifying lessons learned for the project design phase, explain the ground rules for the meeting, and the responsibilities of the participants. Control the meeting interaction, keep the meeting focused on the agenda topics and progressing according to the set schedule. Suggest methods for setting priorities, promoting discussion, and making decisions. Help the group resolve interaction issues, discussions of log jumps, and meeting conflicts. Lastly, support discussion by making notes on a flip chart or whiteboard. The third participant is the scribe. Since the project manager and the facilitator are typically too busy with their other responsibilities to take thorough notes, they appoint someone who is familiar with the project to take notes about discussions, accomplishments, problems, action items, and decisions. The last participants is the team members. They make notes about the lessons they've learned and review the materials that the project manager distributed. Lessons learned agenda. For your reference, here is an example of agenda for a lessons learned meeting. The agenda for the lessons learned meeting are distributed few days before it occurs. An agenda tells the attendees what they should be prepared to discuss and provides the first reminder of the meeting ground rules. By following the agenda, you can be sure to cover all the important points and give each topic its fair share of time. Documenting lessons learned. Lessons don't realize their full potential unless everyone knows about them. Without some way to share lessons learned, other project managers and team members will make the same mistakes you made, solve the problems you've already solved, and rediscover the same effective techniques you are already using. A lessons learned report is one way to publicize recent successes and problems that have been resolved. It describes what went well on a project and what could be improved. The report describes the corrective items that resolve previous problems or action items proposed to fix problems the next time they arise. So lessons learned reports go into the project's notebook to become part of the historical archive for a project. Documenting lessons learned isn't difficult, but identifying lessons can be. Whether you're trying to identify what people did well or the mistakes that occurred from which you can learn, you must make people feel comfortable about sharing what they know.
Hello, I am Mae P Ibita from BSBA Econ 3A. Looking at the full life cycle. It is the series of stages that a project goes through. The number of phases and the sequence of the cycle may differ depending on the company and the type of project. The project management life cycle is divided into 5 stages: project initiation, planning, execution, monitoring or controlling, and closeout. These phases form the path that leads your project from start to finish. Project initiation. The first stage of the project life cycle is initiation. The goal of project initiation is to define the project, create business justification, and gain approval from key stakeholders. To To do so, first, understand the expected business value of the project and how it aligns with the larger organizational goals. Then define the project's main goals, identify key stakeholders, and establish basic expectations. To formalize the work as part of project initiation, do the following. Conduct a feasibility study. A feasibility report identifies all of the resources required for your project, including time, money, and personnel. Use this document to assess the project's viability and decide whether or not to proceed. Create project charter. A project charter, also known as a project initiation document or PID, is a brief formal document that describes your project's justification, objectives, stakeholders, risks, and benefits. Once you have received approval from stakeholders, it's time to get into the weeds of your project by developing a project plan. Project planning. Create an outline that details how your project will progress during the project planning phase. Develop a true understanding of the project's requirements and deliverables, and formally document this knowledge in your project plan. The following elements should be included in a project plan. Identify the scope. Outline your goals for the duration of your project, including strategic objectives and deliverables. Make sure to define what falls within and outside of the scope of the project. Identify the risks. Complete a risk assessment to identify potential project risks and plan for mitigating them. Identify the resources. Determine the resources needed to complete the project successfully. Create a detailed budget, a resource allocation plan, and a list of vendors with whom you will collaborate, if applicable. Identify the metric of success. Define how you will assess the project's success. Determine concrete key performance indicators or KPIs for evaluating your work. Identify the schedule. Create a project schedule that specifies when each project task will be completed by the team, and assign owners to each deliverable. Divide the project into smaller pieces to make it feel more manageable, and identify critical milestones. Communicate with team members and stakeholders. Define the communication methods, cadence, and tools you will use throughout the project. Create a project portal to house all documentation and ensure that all stakeholders have access to the necessary tools and documents. Project execution. The project team works to complete the task outlined in the project plan during project execution. This is typically the most time and resource-intensive phase of the project, and it is what most people refer to as the meat of the project. During project execution, the project manager should start with project kickoff meeting, where you talk about rules, responsibilities, and expectations. Review the project plan and make a list of next steps so that everyone is on the same page about what's next. Check in frequently with team members throughout the execution phase to discuss progress and any issues that arise. Change is unavoidable, but it is critical to communicate early and frequently in order to identify solutions and update plans as needed. And plan to meet regularly with project stakeholders to be able to relay project progress and describe how you are handling any challenges. This will increase confidence and trust. Project monitoring and controlling. The project monitoring and controlling phase occurs concurrently with project execution, but it is treated as a separate phase with its own set of activities. These phases include managing risks and resources, monitoring performances, and modify the project plan necessary. To keep track of all the details of the project, real-time visibility into task status is required. This allows you to accurately report project progress, manage the timeline and budget, and make any necessary changes along the way. The project manager should monitor the following. Risk. No project is immune to risk, but monitoring risk, whether budget, timeline, and incidents or other factors, helps ensure project success. In order to respond quickly when problem arises, emphasize transparency and compliance within your team. Key Performance Indicators or KPI. Evaluate your project on a regular basis against the performance metrics identified during the project planning phase. This will allow you to track the progress of your project throughout its life cycle. Task and project status. Make sure that team members keep track of their progress and any issues that arise in a central location that everyone can access. This will be the project's official record. Scope. Keep an eye on the project scope to avoid scope creep, which is defined as the uncontrolled expansion or shift of project priorities beyond the initial project plan. Set expectation with stakeholders when it comes to requesting changes to project goals and timelines, as new demands can result in unintended risks, project delays, and budget overruns. When you have completed the project and are ready to turn in project deliverables, the monitoring and controlling phase comes to an end. Project closeout. Project closeout, also known as project closure, denotes the completion of a project. During this stage, the team distributes final deliverables to business stakeholders, conducts a project retrospective, and usually attends the post-mortem meeting to discuss what went well and identify room for improvement. During project closeout, discuss any outstanding deliverables with stakeholders and devise a plan to resolve them. Create a project budget report that details the actual spending and keep all project documentation in one place for easy reference. The project closeout phase is critical because it allows you to identify lessons learned and highlight key insights for future projects.
For the summary, project closure is the critical last phase in the project management lifecycle. During project closure, the team reviews the deliverables, then compares and tests its quality to the intended project outcome. Then, they share the deliverables with the project client. And also, a project closure report is the last deliverable submitted at the end of the project and it measures the project overall success. Project management is directly connected to the first kind. Both effective management of the project and organizational business objectives alignment is the key. The three project success criteria are the triple constraints, which are the cost, scope, and time. Project closeout templates save project manager time by providing organized checklists for completion, planning, post-mortem agendas for project review, and formal closeout reports for approval sign-off from clients and internal stakeholders. Learning from the past is the easiest way to improve performance in the future. And also, there are 5 phases in the full project life cycle. It consists of project initiation, project planning, project execution, project monitoring and control, and lastly, project closeout.